I moved here in late 2021, and the following June, I got appointed to the Downtown Development Committee, which is a citizen advisory commission to advise the town board on various things that impact this downtown area. One of our first orders of business was to have input on the social district, which was then sort of a new, this was 2022, and the General Assembly had just allowed towns, I think the previous year, to have these social districts allow people to take to-go cups from participating bars and then walk around within the bounds of the district. And a lot of towns have adopted these, Raleigh, and I can't think of a town in the area that hasn't taken advantage of that opportunity. And then the meat of what we've been doing is approving upfit grants for downtown businesses that want to upgrade their exterior with murals or awnings or new windows and entryways and things like that. But there's a new point system that is supposed to incentivize the creation of new restaurants, because most of these downtown buildings were not originally fitted for restaurants with the drainage and the hoods for exhaust and all that kind of thing that you need to be up to code to have a kitchen or even like a coffee shop. And so we have the highest level of points would either activate a second story for an office or maybe an apartment or something, another use, or recently a second story of a dance studio, or to create a new restaurant. And so we have a pot of money that we can advise the town board to award in grants for that purpose. And I'd love to see even more budget put towards that as we grow our tax base, because there's lots of businesses down here, or lots of buildings that could house new restaurants that, that's consistently something that in surveys that the town puts out for residents that people are always saying, and I agree. I mean, I want to be able, I live a few minutes walk from Main Street, and I would love to be able to walk down here and eat at even more restaurants. The day I looked at my house, I ended up eating downtown at a business that's changed hands. It's no longer there, but it's a corner restaurant. And I remember sitting there and just kind of looking around and being struck by the fact that there were no chain restaurants. This was all local businesses, and I thought it was a really cute downtown, and I love my house. Obviously, I ended up buying it. It was built in 1941. I fell in love with the town, and I want to keep us moving in the right direction. We're one of the fastest growing towns in the state, and there are a lot of opportunities that come with that growth. We've got a Wake Med facility now. It used to be that if you had an emergency, you would have to drive to Big Wake on New Bern Avenue over in Raleigh, 20-25 minutes away, and now we have an emergency room right here in Wendell Falls. And that wouldn't have happened without more people to justify that investment from Wake Med. And we've got a Wake Tech campus now over by East Wake High School, and then across the street from that, we're going to have a commerce center with major manufacturers and other employers that will help us to be less of just a bedroom community for Raleigh, but a more self-contained town that has jobs and commerce and housing all in the same, as close together as possible. And I want to continue encouraging more of amenities and business and jobs and recreation, parks and rec and all that as close together as possible, so people don't have to get in their cars as much to go to Raleigh or somewhere else. They can stay right here in Wendell to spend their time and their dollars. And I would love to be a part of making that happen.
What are some changes or improvements that you'd like to see if you were elected?
Yeah, so we're developing a new Unified Development Ordinance, the UDO, that should take effect next year. And I would love to see, one of the challenges we have is that anytime someone wants to build a townhouse in Wendell, you have to get a special use permit. I want to see more types of housing allowed by right across town, so that you don't have to continually, go to the town board for, to approve that kind of development. I love that we're building more types of housing like townhouses and apartments, multifamily structures, so that particularly younger folks of lesser means can just get a foothold in our community. They may eventually want to get a single family house, but they can't afford it right now. I mean, a lot of folks that move here, including myself, were priced out of other places like Raleigh. And I want to make sure that we continue to be an affordable corner of Wake County, and that as we grow, we're not wasting the land, and that we make the right land use choices now, because we don't get a redo for a long time, if ever. And it's important that the decisions we make right now are the smartest we can possibly make, the highest and best uses of that land, and that we minimize the footprint of land that we develop so that we can preserve some of the green space. We don't have to build as much road mileage and surface parking lots and driveways, and and we encourage multifamily housing, multi-use developments, and density, so that it's not giving in to the impulse of suburban sprawl that we saw in a lot of other places. It's sort of a chicken and egg thing. A lot of our roads are controlled by DOT and not the town, and so there's a limited amount that we can do with those roads. The current board has been doing a good job, I think, of making developers contribute towards the widening of roads and the improvement of pedestrian infrastructure and building out this multi-use path that we have that's connecting, eventually will fully connect Wendell Falls to downtown so that folks can walk, run, bike, or use their golf carts. People love golf carts, and particularly in Wendell Falls, we have a whole ordinance around their, regulating their use on different roads, and the multi-use path will allow golf carts to also use that to get between downtown and Wendell. Yeah, so I mean, as I mentioned, there are a lot of opportunities that come with growth. Obviously, there are challenges. I mean, it does bring more people using our roads, and I think the town has done a pretty good job of doing traffic impact studies in the course of doing rezoning to make sure that the amount of development that is approved isn't more than what those roads in the vicinity can handle. So I definitely want to make sure we continue to keep that in mind. And I would love for people to not have to use the major roads any more than they have to. Also, like, building within developments some of those side roads to get to places they don't have to get out onto Wendell Falls Boulevard and Wendell Boulevard. And then also, obviously, building out the Greenway even more and that multi-use path and giving people other options to get around. And then building more things downtown for folks who live walkable distance from here or in Wendell Falls, in Treelight Square. A lot of the businesses that are, restaurants and other shops and stuff that are, moving there, so that people can, get around more easily in a shorter amount of time to all the things that they want to do.
Now, you mentioned all types of housing available, and that is being built. So do you have plans on how to make more affordable housing available?
We don't have like a New York City budget for public housing in the town of Wendell. The county has a couple different public housing developments, and I would love to see. It would take some really careful community engagement, because obviously folks would be concerned about being displaced, but I think those were built in the 70s and aren't necessarily in the best shape anymore, and I would love to see those folks live in a little bit better environs and also have more units on that footprint. So I'd love to see, redevelop those public housing neighborhoods and give people both better housing. The folks who are there, obviously they would have to temporarily be moved somewhere else. We have to find somewhere for them to live, and somewhere that's not gonna, send them way out into the hinterlands, that's even further out from wherever it is that they work or do business. But so again, the community engagement part will be very important, but I'd love to work with the county to see if there's a way we can do even more for the people who are already there, and also build even more units on that footprint.
Do you have any plans or some steps that you would take to put Wendell on more financial footing if you were elected?
That's something that we've got to make sure that as we grow the tax base, we're not, we're keeping the amount that we're taxing each property owner as revenue neutral as possible. That's one of the side benefits of growth, is that you don't have to, and sometimes you can even lower the rate because you have a higher property value that you can tax at the existing rate.
Do you see that happening, lowering taxes?
Possibly. I'm not making any sort of pledge.
No,
here now,
no.
but,
That's the first person I've heard say that. That's
But
it's
you know,
with the growth and big hospitals and businesses coming in.
Well, that's again one of the great things about more commercial development is that, you know, they're chipping in too, and it's not just falling on the backs of existing homeowners. You know, we're taxing residential and commercial landowners for you know, for what they do with their property, and so yeah, I mean, you know, with WakeMed coming here and then the Commerce Center and the folks who will establish businesses there, that's going to be brand new thing, you know, businesses that we can tax and add to the rolls without raising the actual percentage rate on folks.
So if you're elected to the town Board of Commissioners, how do you plan to make it accessible to a diverse population, diverse groups, to have them have a voice and have them have representation?
Yeah, well, our motto is small town, big charm, and I want us to live up to that. One of the things that I talk about is I want Wendell to be a welcoming community where everyone can afford to thrive. And I mean everyone. We are relatively affordable compared to, say, Raleigh or Cary, and that's a big reason that we are growing. And I want to make sure that we don't build a wall around the town and pull up the ladder behind us, and then as soon as we move here say, we're full, you can't move here. And I don't find that to be a very welcoming, charming attitude for a town to have, or a progressive attitude to have. And so I want to make sure that, you know, we're continually figuring out a way to not say no, but to say, okay, how? And how do we find room for everyone? I mean, one of the challenges with community engagement at the local level is obviously, you know, we see it in election turnout. You know, we have perpetually low turnout pretty much everywhere, including Wendell, and folks aren't as engaged in, I mean, everyone feels local issues more than any other, you know, state policy or federal policy, but they aren't as aware of who their leaders are and how they can have a say in changing things at the local level. And they don't realize necessarily who is in control that they can talk to influence what happens at the local level. And so the challenge is always getting a representative sample of your town's actual population. You know, we always hear from the loudest voices, and usually they're the ones who oppose everything. People who are busy with their lives, raising their children, working, tend not to show up as much. And we need to do a better job of reaching out, knocking on doors, sending out surveys, calling, sending mailers, you know, whatever it is that, you know, trying new innovative ways to include more people, more representative cross-section of our town in assessing where people want things to go, and not just listen to the folks who have the time and in some ways privileged to show up on a Monday night to our town board meetings, and, you know, which, depending on what's on the agenda, you know, draws more or less people, but still relatively few people compared to the number of people that live in our town.
Now you mentioned Wendell has a small town feel and you want to keep that, and it brings me to the unfortunate circumstances that a lot of people are going to lose their SNAP benefits, and just a few years ago it was almost 100,000 Wake County residents relied on SNAP. So with the cuts coming this year, and they're going to be big, how does a small town handle, you know, the food insecurity that a lot more people will face?
Yeah, that's, you know, that's a question I don't have an immediate great answer to, because we obviously don't have the budget to immediately make up for what the federal government was providing to those folks who really need it. And I wish I could say, well, we'll just find the money in Wendell's budget, but, you know, it definitely doesn't exist to the level that it needs to, you know, come from our budget. We have churches in the area and community groups who have food pantries and do as much as they can. And obviously, we'll have to figure out if there's a way that we can ramp up funding for those groups even more, public-private partnerships, and obviously I hope that those cuts can be reversed and the 2026 elections bring some significant change to what's going on in Washington. And I, in my background as just a regular citizen and also professionally, I've, spent a lot of time advocating for better policy at the state and federal level, and I'm going to continue doing that. And hopefully, as a local elected official, I'll have, to the extent a member of the Wendell Town Board has a platform, use that platform to advocate for policy at higher levels that will improve our citizens' lives, advocate against policies that are going to hurt them. I think that's part of my job, is to bring people's stories to their elected officials